Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, this is the beauty of YouTube, is that you could put whatever you say on record. And then you can go back when everything you said was proven to be right. That's a good feeling, right? I mean, we're not going to always be right. But when you get some breaking news, some breaking boxing news that does prove that you were right, let's just say it's not a bad feeling. The double standards that exist in the sport today are at an all-time high. Or maybe I could even say at an all-time low. It cannot be proven more when it comes to this case of Johnny Gonzalez, the champion, ducking Gary Russell Jr. Let's revisit a video that I did a couple weeks ago. I was basically just reporting the latest news that Johnny Gonzalez had once again, for the second time, rejected a fight with Gary Russell Jr. Now, in that video, of course, I told you guys that Nacho Beristain and people like Johnny Gonzalez, they're no fools. They know how talented Gary Russell is. They know that that is an extremely difficult fight to win when it comes to Gary Russell. They are looking at all of this. They understand that they have a better chance to beat Abner Mares in a rematch than they do a young lion, an American slickster, great defense, speed, head movement, agility, power, fight on the inside, can fight on the outside, tremendous body puncher, has an amateur pedigree that is out of this world. I mean, this man has won almost every national and international tournament there is, coming in first place. That is the most dangerous combination of skills and success. And Johnny Gonzalez understands this. And the fans that defend Johnny Gonzalez, they also understand this. And this was proven by what Johnny Gonzalez is attempting to do now. They understand this. This is what I was telling you guys in the first video. But it didn't resonate with people that were obviously defending Johnny Gonzalez and really just basically going against Gary Russell. Like I just said in the previous video, Lomachenko only has one fight. He's fighting for a title. These same fans that are basically shitting on Gary Russell and defending Johnny Gonzalez, they had no problem with Lomachenko fighting for a title. I had no problem with Lomachenko fighting for a title. I felt, hey, if the man is good enough to win a title, then he's good enough. You guys have to understand something. Leon Spinks, he fought Muhammad Ali for the title. Leon Spinks at the time, I believe, had 7 or 8 fights, and he beat Muhammad Ali, who was considered the greatest, okay? So and we just seen Guillermo Rigo. Everyone said he wasn't ready. 11 fights, you're not ready to fight pound for pound Donaire. Look what happened. He beat Donaire. So if I had no problems, and I wasn't making no videos talking about this is ridiculous how Lomachenko is fighting for a title, he doesn't deserve a title. If I had no problem with Lomachenko fighting against Salido for a title, or whoever he's going to fight for a title, why is it you guys have a problem with a guy who is 24-0, like Gary Russell, who is ready to fight for a title? Does it make sense to you guys? Let's go into some of the comments that people were sending me when I made this video. Gary Russell doesn't deserve to fight for a title. What has Gary Russell done? Can you name me some fighters that he beat in the top 10? He doesn't deserve to fight for a title. And now I'm like, okay, I get it. So you guys are basically saying that Johnny Gonzalez is only going to fight a guy who really deserves to fight for his title, right? A guy who's fought a couple of top contenders, a guy who really has done enough, who's really dangerous. You guys said, name me some people that Gary Russell fought, right? So that means you want Johnny Gonzalez to fight a guy who's so good that we can name big name opponents or noticeable opponents, top 10 guys that he actually faced, right? So let's look at who Johnny Gonzalez is in the process of fighting next. There it is. Johnny Gonzalez's next opponent is a man out of Guyana, Africa, named Clive Atwell. Let's look at his record. Let's look at some of his opponents, because you guys told me that Gary Russell, he ain't fought nobody, right? And can you name somebody that Gary Russell has beat, right? Because this is what Johnny Gonzalez was really looking for. He was looking for someone who had names on their record, right? He was looking for a real challenger. He was looking for someone who deserved to fight for a championship belt. Now look at this man's record. Look at some of his opponents. The last guy that he faced was 3-8. Before that, it was 1-2. He fought a guy that was 15-3. But go down a little further, he fought a guy who was 5-13 losses, 6-7 losses. But it's not just about the losses. It's about the fact that Clive Atwell, he has never fought anyone out of his own country. On top of that, right? He's 12-0 with 1 draw. So once again, to my Johnny Gonzalez supporters, or maybe I should say my Gary Russell detractors, how do you explain this, guys? How do you explain the discrepancy? How do you explain that Johnny Gonzalez turned down a Golden Boy affiliated Gary Russell Jr., who, by the way, would have paid Johnny Gonzalez far more money than he's making fighting against Clive Atwell? The fight would have been aired on a major network. It probably would have even been the main event. But instead, he's deciding to fight a no-name African guy with absolutely no credentials on his record or resume. How do you guys explain this? I rest my case on this one. I rest my case. Like I said before, everything that I said has been proven. The day I read this article that Johnny Gonzalez was fighting a complete bum, it proved everything that I said from the beginning. Okay? Now we know the truth, and the whole truth, and there's no disputing it, thanks to what Johnny Gonzalez just did in his next move. You know, people are always talking about fans being biased, etc., etc. But what's so funny about that word bias is the only people that are being biased right now are the people that are defending Johnny Gonzalez. Those are the only people that are being extremely biased, okay? Everyone is biased to a certain extent. I mean, when you see a guy who has painted his whole car Dallas Cowboy color and put the Dallas Cowboy logos all over the car, obviously that guy is biased, right? But that's more of a normal bias. But when the bias behavior becomes extreme and it's almost offensive or unbearable is when you have fans like this, like Johnny Gonzalez fans. And they're not, like I said, they're not even really Johnny Gonzalez fans. They're just Gary Russell detractors. But these type of fans right here, when they do stuff like this, and when I say stuff like this, I'm talking about, for example, these fans, they say stuff to defend Johnny that Johnny never said himself. Johnny never said, I'm not fighting Gary Russell. He doesn't deserve to fight for the title. I only want to fight a guy who has, big names on his record, and he's already fought guys in the top 10, etc., etc. Johnny Gonzalez never said any of that. These were biased fans who came up with their own excuses, which is what they always do. All right? Johnny Gonzalez never said any of these things. Only thing Johnny Gonzalez said is if they want me to fight Gary Russell, they're going to have to give me a whole lot of money. That was the only thing that Johnny Gonzalez said about Gary Russell, and that speaks volumes, doesn't it? It speaks volumes. Once again, it goes back to the days when I was younger, and like I said, all my older relatives and friends, they used to always say, shoot, yeah, I get in the ring with Mike Tyson for $1 million. He can knock my head off for $1 million, right? Saying, if you're going to get in there with a monster, just pay me the right money. And that's exactly what Johnny Gonzalez said about Gary Russell. Oh, sure, I'll get in the ring with him. You're going to have to give me a whole lot of money, though. But he would rather fight Clive Atwell out of Guyana for no money at all. How do you explain this, guys? How do you explain this? 100% proof. You're looking at it. Okay? The only way you can explain it that makes any sense is that Johnny Gonzalez, he thought he would probably lose to Gary Russell. Johnny Gonzalez believes he has a better chance of beating Abner Mares than he does beating Gary Russell Jr. And then you ask the question, why is it these same fans who had a problem with Gary Russell fighting for the title, they don't have a problem with Clive Atwell fighting for the title? Could it possibly be because Johnny Gonzalez has a much better chance beating a Clive Atwell out of Guyana than he does beating Gary Russell Jr.? I told you guys all of this. I told you guys all of this prior. I told you guys it was all about trying to keep certain people from winning the title. Like I said, they don't care that Lomachenko fights for a title because Lomachenko is not someone that they dislike. For whatever reason, and I think we all know why, they don't like Gary Russell. They don't want Gary Russell to win the title against Johnny Gonzalez. But they wouldn't mind if Lomachenko was winning the title against Gonzalez. They wouldn't mind. Gee whiz. I wonder why. I mean, you have people sending some of the most ridiculous comments just to defend Johnny Gonzalez. You know, the classic one is when they know that Gary's trying to fight Johnny Gonzalez and they say, oh, he doesn't deserve to fight Johnny. Well, let me ask you this. Why did he duck Ponce de Leon? You know what? Let's go ahead and talk about the Ponce de Leon. And the Ponce de Leon comments that people send further proves the ridiculous double standards that we are dealing with in the sport of boxing today. Because in the Ponce de Leon situation, for those of you guys who don't follow the boxing news as closely as I do, Gary Russell and Golden Boy, they had actually called out, excuse me, they had actually called out Ponce de Leon twice in the past. Way before he lost to Abner Mares, they had called him out. And then they called him out a second time. Now, the first time Gary Russell and Golden Boy called out Ponce de Leon, Ponce already had a fight scheduled. But Ponce said, you know, after that fight, yes, I'll be willing to fight Gary Russell. Once Golden Boy tried to make the fight at 126, which is where Ponce fights, where Gary Russell fights, all of a sudden, Ponce, he says, I'm moving up to 130. And if you want to fight me, you're going to have to follow me up to 130. Okay? So this is the reason why the fight, it never happened. Gary Russell fights at 26. Gary Russell to this day is fighting at 26. He has never fought at 130. So who turned the fight down? Without being biased and making sense of this, who turned the fight down? If you would say anyone turned the fight down, you would say it was the guy who said, I'm moving up to another division and you could follow me to this division if you want. Right? It's the double standards that exist in the sport of boxing. I mean, let's just think about it. Hypothetically, let's say Canelo Alvarez, hypothetically, he wanted to fight Erislandy Lara. Right? Let's say that Canelo, he was like, you know, that's the fight we want next. Golden Boy, they're trying to reach out to Lara, right? And all of a sudden, Lara says, you know what? I'm moving up to 160. And if you guys want to fight me, you're going to have to come up to 160. Who would the fans accuse of ducking that fight? That's obvious, right? They would accuse Lara of ducking. The double standards in the sport of boxing are ridiculous, to say the least. So that's my time, guys. I want to go ahead and give out a thanks to Johnny Gonzalez for proving everything that I said to be right. And I'll catch up with you on the next video. I'm on to the next one.